Good morning, YouTube. Welcome back. Today, we are turning this AC closet into not an AC closet. Yes, you heard that right. This once housed a beautiful AC unit, but we moved it to the attic. Not that part of the attic, another part of the attic. And so, we made this guy. I created it into a pantry because my wife said, make me a pantry. So, once the AC guys got everything ripped out and done, and they left all this beautiful mess for me, I got right to work. Sweeping and swapping and vacuuming and macuing and all the beautiful things that exist, and don't mind those things that you see there. That's fine. But it being an AC closet, there was a little bit of water damage, and I know, hey, don't lie. Sometimes, we get some water damage and we gotta replace what has had some water damage. You know what I'm talking about. So I took my trusty level and made sure it was level, so that way I had a straight line all the way around, so that way whenever I cut my piece of drywall, it actually looks good. And if you don't have yourself a oscillating multi-tool, I didn't have one for a long time, and honestly, I really didn't need it for a lot of what I was doing. But if you ever buy a home, or maybe you have a home, oscillating multi-tools are amazing. Just get yourself a pretty decent blade. I really like my Ryobi one, but you can get a corded one. You can get whatever battery platform. They actually have some 12-volt ones as well from what I've seen. So if you want to hop into that 12-volt platform and just do weekend warrior type stuff, that's super easy. But this drywall came out super easy because of all of the water damage that was there. And as you can see, I have a tub on the other side of this, and so I'm going to make sure there's a cutout just in case I ever have issues with this tub and the water lines and all of that. I can still access it. So once I got all of that cleaned up and ready to go, I took my measurements and I brought it back outside to make sure I get a perfect cut on this drywall. I just wanted to make sure I had a awesome experience with drywall. I've actually never done drywall, so this is the first time I ever even cut it or did anything. And if you are one in the comments who has never done drywall, let me know. But I want to encourage you, it is way easier than it looks in first try, right? Well, second try, that's all you need is two. Maybe third try. Okay, there we go. Third time's the charm. Wait, 4 tries. Okay, so cut it 4 times and then you will most likely get to the right spot. I think maybe I've just gotten to this mindset of everything has to be so precise in furniture making that in something like drywall, it doesn't have to be as precise. Speaking of precision, that specific little blue box that will cover that area is there just to be a cover. And so it doesn't have to be perfect. And so I actually didn't cut on the line. Really, this cut looks like my kid's ability to color in a coloring book, and it's kind of just everywhere. So these cuts, they're not straight, they're not pretty, but most people won't ever see it. So let's take that back in there and shove her in there. Make sure when you do drywall though, mark out your studs. I did this for this piece, but there's another piece that I forgot to mark my studs, and it happened to be in the ceiling, and that was a interesting time. Thankfully, drywall mud can cover a multitude of sins, aka screw holes, and so I made sure to measure everything very precise, make it pretty. I even measured and wrote in my head the distance off of each of those 2x4s so I can make sure I get it precise, and then I forgot that measurement. So write it down. You can write it on the wall. You're going to paint the wall anyway, so do that. But if you've never done drywall, it's super easy. Score it with the utility knife and then break it like a real man. And then once you've broken it from the other side, score it with the utility knife to cut the other side of the paper, and bada boom, bada bang, you're in business. And if you're like me and you messed up on your cut, that's where the multi-tool comes in. So you can't see this on camera, but I do have some pipes for the AC unit that needed to get notched out. So made sure I cut that and I threw it up there, and it was this time was legitimately a one-time fit. It was really tight, and so I probably could have done it a little bit shorter or smaller, but hey, first time doing drywall, I'm pretty satisfied. But I could not find out where the studs were. So write your stud location down. Go ahead and write it on the wall. Get yourself a marker. Do that. It'll save you a ton of time in the end. But either way, I got it done. I put my drywall screws in, and I moved on to patching some of these holes that were in the wall. And so these were a little bit too big, in my opinion, for mud based on the research that I've done and the YouTube I've watched. So I marked this out, and it was a 2-inch by 3-inch. Cut it out, and I'm going to have a pretty patch. Maybe you've seen this on YouTube before. I was trying this out, and I almost hit that nail. So I thank God that that nail was right above my multi-tool, because that would have ruined my nice blade that is not meant for nails. So if you get something like this, it's really helpful to mark over an inch more than what you need, and then just score one side like you would normally do. Break it, but don't cut the other side of the paper. Do that on all 4 sides, and then you'll have this overlap for paper. So this is for another patch, not the one that I'm showing on camera. So now get you some pre-mixed drywall mud, because again, never done this before. And then I had 2, what do you call those, metal scrapers that I was using. Wet you some, get your paste on there, get your mud on there, and then wipe it on, and then put your tape, and then smooth it all out. And the corners, you get specific tape that has corner capabilities, and it's really easy. I was surprised by how simple doing all this drywall was. So this is where you don't even have to use tape if you do this method for fixing little patches in your house. Super easy. Now, one thing I learned after doing all this drywall is you're supposed to sand. So my dumb self now has nasty looking walls all up and down because I did not sand and apply more mud. So I highly encourage you to do that and don't make the same mistakes I did. But if you're ever going straight on the drywall, it is definitely recommended to use some primer. I know paint technically doesn't need primer nowadays, but with these walls, with some of the moisture that had been happened to these walls, I definitely wanted to throw some of this Kills 2 on there. It's supposed to block mildew and things of that nature, and it definitely helps the paint go down a little bit better. So I threw some of this on there all the way around. You can see there's still some water damage, but not enough to impact the capabilities or the stability of this drywall. It was just on those 2 side walls. So I got these all nice and primed and got them ready for the next step. And while we wait for the entertainment to continue, your daily dad joke is as follows. What do you call a fish with no eyes? No, seriously, let me know in the comments what you would call a fish with no eyes. It's a fish. Well, more of a fish. So now that all of that is primed, we are moving to paint the door to this system. So you give it a nice good shake. This is an oil-based enamel, so it's supposed to be a little more resilient. And so it matches my trim. And so I wanted to make sure all of that matched. So I'm actually using a 4-inch roller, 1/4-inch nap. This is supposed to be very smooth finish. And so I got that on there. And bada boom, bada bang, got it nice and painted with the first coat. And then I had to pop out my old redneck ingenuity right here. I am in Texas after all. And I was wondering how I was going to keep paint off the things behind this door so I could paint the other side. So I just nailed a thing to the top, and bada boom, bada bang, I was able to do both sides, let it dry for 24 hours, give it a quick sand to take off that gloss, that little sheen, you know, for oil-based paint. Then, of course, you got to wipe that all down with the damp rag. Make sure you get all of those fine dust particles off. And then, second coat. I only did 2 coats for this door, to be honest. You probably could have done more, but, you know, 2 coats I thought was enough. And then I got a buddy to help me hang this door frame. Sorry I don't have video of that. If you've never hung a door frame, it's actually pretty simple. So, my dumb self, whenever I hung this door here, I wasn't paying attention to the bottom hinge, and I put it on there backwards. I know it's kind of hard to see that. But, hey, sometimes you make dumb mistakes, and at least this was a easy dumb mistake to fix. Attach the door handle. Now, I need to know. I need you to tell me in the comments, what is the best way to attach a door handle? Because these long screws are such a pain, and I have never been able to get a screwdriver or a drill in there well enough to make it simple. It always takes me forever, and I just hand tighten it for the most part and then shove my drill in there and partially strip out the screw. So, but hey, the door works. My first door I've ever hung. That's a success. So currently we are still unpacking in our new house, and so this is what my shop looks like. I did upgrade. I now have a 2-car garage with an office in the back there for my 3D printing, but I got to work outside. So I pulled the table saw out and I got to work. So this is all the pieces that will hold shelves for the pantry. If you haven't noticed, at this point there is nothing to screw the shelves into. So I cut all of these strips at 2.5 inches. Why 2.5 inches? I don't know. In my head, I thought 2.5 inches is great. I think if I was to go back and do this again, I think I would drop it down to 1 inch, to be honest. I don't think you need this girthy of strips for what's happening. And of course, doing my routine maintenance on my Bosch sander, routinely I have to tear these sanding pads out. Have y'all ever had that issue where your sanding pad just does not hold the sandpaper anymore? Well, I have it at least twice a year, and so I buy packs of 2 of those Bosch sandpaper attachment, or the hook and loop. So also, this is a new shot for me. I'm using one of my drones. Let me know in the comments, do you like drone shots? If you don't like it, and it gives you kind of a weird thing, I know it was a windy day for this, and so the drone was going crazy. But if you like the new shots, do you get a cool vertical? Type drone in the comment below. I would love to get y'all's feedback. But here's all of the pieces that I cut and I sanded. Some are out of plywood, some are out of MDF. I'm literally just using scraps at this point. So I get all of it. I cut them down to length, and I even put an angle on the cut just so when you're looking at it from the front, it's just not blocky. And here's all my measurements. I actually took a measurement specifically from the top, and then I measured every 6 inches. So I have these adjustable shelves, and then that's how I found my bottom distance that I needed. And so I started at the bottom, started from the bottom. Now we're here. Anybody else? No? Just me? Wow. I'll get to that age. Well, I also cut these spacers at 3.5 inches so that I could have 6 inch, right? Because 2.5 plus 3.5 equals 6. So I can have 6 inch spacing on all of these, which keeps me from having to measure and make mistakes. And so to start with, I'm just throwing these 1.25 inch 16 gauge brad nails with my Ryobi nailer. I could have brought my compressor in, but I'm pretty sure I was doing this while my kid was taking a nap, and he's like right in the next room. And so this was a little bit quieter than that. And so periodically I measured for level, which turns out I didn't actually have to do because, man, was this thing awesome. Using spacers is the best way to do woodworking, because check this out. With just one measurement, I was able to get perfect level all the way to the very top. Some say that's good enough for government work. Yeah, I said that. Well, I, in my head, cut all 3 pieces to the same length, and then I realized I don't need to cut them all to the same length. And so I do have the back pieces a little bit shorter than I probably should have. But anyway, those nails are not going to hold up. So I made sure to come back and pre-drill and screw 3, I think there were 2.25 inch screws. And I put 4 in every single one. So these are not going to have any issue holding any amount of grocery or anything in them. No matter what I throw at these shelves, they're going to hold because I know they are. I mean, seriously, have you ever had a shelf fail in your pantry? Like, I never have. And usually they use those peg systems, which I thought about doing, but it was a lot more work. And, this was easier and cheaper. That's what I did because I'm pretty cheap. Let me know in the comments if you spend the extra money to do things prettier or do you do them cheaper. And then also let me know if your wife lets you do them cheaper. So anyway, once I get everything screwed in, I make sure the back is good. I use that block and then just line it up throw some nails in, go to the next one. This, y'all, blocks and spacers and levels make things so much easier than measuring everything and trying to get everything precise. I did get lucky here because, again, I didn't take into account where my stud is, and so I am literally within a ½ inch of the other side of that shelf. But I got them in 2 studs on every single one. I got 2 studs hitting, and we're ready to go make those shelves. What am I saying? Shelves? You got to paint the space first, man, because you got to let the paint dry while you make the shelves. Duh. So I got some butcher paper, and I laid that on the ground because, you know, who wants painted concrete? Now, I think I want to put some flooring in, but again, that's another thing I've never done, is have flooring or do flooring. I've had flooring before, obviously. So I was debating on doing this in this video, but it would just get too long. So let me know in the comments if you want to see the flooring and the electrical and potentially the covering for those things, the tubes, the conduit. But I painted everything with my Home Right sprayer. If you want to know more about the stuff that I have in these videos, let me know in the comments. I will have a link to most of the things that I used in this video down in the comments, whether it's this Home Right sprayer or other things. So check it out, those links. If you click on it, it costs nothing to you. I do get a small commission just because they're affiliate links, and it would help me out if you bought something after clicking those links within the next couple of days. If you don't, no worries, but if you want to know where I get these things and what I use, that's an easy way to do it. So again, I'm setting up this table saw, got an outfeed table to cut down my sheets to length, and then I got to go back in time because we got to cut them to width first. Wait, am I cutting them to width there, or am I cutting them to length? I think I'm cutting them width. Does it matter? Does length and width matter whenever you're talking, or as long as you use length to measure the exact same spot every time versus width? Interesting. Science. So anyway, I got my trusty Craig track saw, which my father-in-law accidentally bought this. He meant to buy the other piece, and so I lucked out and got a free track saw, which is great because my Festool 47,000 is not always accurate. But this is just a 2x12, I'm sorry, a 1x12 that was in my house before, and I don't want to use it, and so I used it to add a face frame to all of these shelves just so the plywood edge isn't seen from the front. Plus it kind of beefs up the shelf, you'll see. And so sanded all those down because they were painted white. Actually, I don't know if it was paint or if it was just primer, to be honest. But I got them all sanded down and ready for real paint because I gotta paint the shelves. I can't just leave them wood. Well, I could, but the old lady wouldn't be happy about that now, would she? So here's the shelf. Put a little bead of glue on there. Then I take my brand new, I know I got a lot of new tools when I bought this stupid house, but I bought me a 23 gauge pin nailer, not a brad nailer, a pin nailer. And man, it is awesome. Paint literally covers up these little bitty holes that it has. So scrape off the semi-dried glue, which the brad nails just hold it in a little bit. And so then, man, time to test fit. And am I good at measuring? So good that this thing fits like a glove. But I don't want it to fit like a glove. I want it to fit like a slightly loose glove. So took it back to my table saw, got my crosscut sled, and just took a table saw blades width out on all of them so that way they would go in just a little bit easier, because I do not want to hammer every single one of these shelves in, and they're supposed to be adjustable. So if I hammer it in, then I got to hammer it out, and I don't want to deal with hammer time all the time. So boom, here is what part of the finished product will look like. Just a little sneak peek, if you will. But of course we got to put paint on these suckers. So I actually painted the same color as the walls. I probably should have used my oil-based. It takes forever to dry, and I was so done with this. I was just so ready to have a pantry because we had moved in by this point. So Get a coat, put it on the backs first, because I'm only doing one coat on all the backs, and I'm doing 2 coats on the fronts. The tops, the fronts. I guess it's the top. So I'm going to do 2 coats on the top, because that's the spot that actually will get beat up and damaged and all that good stuff. So get all this done, then give me a second coat on there. Let me know in the comments, what was the first tool that you ever bought or received? First tool I ever got was just a drill. A regular drill. Nothing else. Just a drill. That someone gifted me. A little 18-volt Ryobi drill. And that began my process. Just curious, what was the first tool you ever got? Here's a little tidbit of information. If you wrap up with cellophane or a plastic bag your roller or whatever, you come back in a couple hours, boom, perfect. So here I use 3/8 inch snap, and I think I should have used a 1/4 because it was a little different from what I wanted it to be. A little more grainy. And here's those lines. I think I want to cover them, but at this point, I don't really care. I just want to get this thing done. So I grabbed everything out. I moved out our makeshift junk that is used to hold all our food and all the good stuff, and started putting in my beautiful, pristine shelves. And look how easy these things go in. Boom. Look at that. You ready for this? Easy. Boom. Number 3. Oh yeah. Number 4. And finally, number 5. Now I did have to go back in and pre-drill and drill just real quick some screws on all 3 of the side pieces so that the pieces wouldn't fit. But let me know what you think. A DIY pantry, super easy, super simple, something you can do yourself. Thanks for dropping in. Hope you loved it. I'll catch you in the next one.